Hello, everyone. This is Kareem, and welcome to Essential Libertarians, creating the discussions to open up a decentralized future. I'm your host, Kareem, with my co host, Max Henry. And today we have two special guests Adam Reinhart, who is running for East Vice Chair. He does outright libertarians, helping integrate LGBTQA plus folks into the movement. And also, on top of that, he helps with a lot of Christian caucuses and other stuff. So he's really busy. We also have Joseph Evans. He's an awesome guy. He knows both about the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, which is super helpful. He's doing Kind Idaho. He's an advocate for marijuana legalization, distribution, and he's also looking at a congressional run in Idaho. Today, guys, I want to discuss how we can take the libertarian right, the libertarian left, if you want to call them decentralized, and bring them together in a sort of kind of panarchism thing or mutualism thing, and how that might work. Because we always hear about it, and I have some knowledge of it, but reading Rothbard, reading Bakunin, I don't think one size fits all for everyone, even if it's decentralized. And I kind of want to see how that would work and just get your perspectives on that. And we were having an awesome conversation, so let's keep it going.
Okay.
So guys, we were just talking about how we were just talking about
run with it, Max. Run with it.
Green energy, right? We were talking about green energy and how it needs to be more in demand before it's forced on people. And of course, all of us want free markets. We all want free markets, and we would love for. I drive a hybrid, as I mentioned. And I like my hybrid. I get 41 miles per gallon. It's great. It's great. And I got that just because I knew government was going to enforce a lot of the anti-big oil restrictions that they usually impose when the Democrats are in power, right? So I got that hybrid. I just wish that the hybrid was in demand on its own. So I had tax savings when I got it. I had all types of subsidies and tax incentives and to go get that hybrid. It would have not been so if it was in a free market. So I just really wish that if we are going to go a lot greener, which I want clean air, clean water. I want like anyone else. I'm glad to see, hey, props to fucking King Trump over there for making the air just a little cleaner. Props for him for doing that.
Right.
Maybe it's not as much as we want to, but it's a little better than it was yesterday. So that's good. But yeah, if it could stand on its own 2 feet, I think everyone will go for it anyway. It just seems like the logical choice. Unfortunately, right now, the technology doesn't seem to really be there. But what's your take on that, Joseph?
Well, one of the things you look at with economics, and you actually got to start going back to Austrian rather than the Chicago school, is the fact that early adopters are always going to be part of the mix. Okay, you need people who want to see the change, who can afford to see the change, who go in and see the technology, see the opportunities, and say, I want that. I want that to happen. That's the way it worked with computers. That's the way it worked with cars. We saw the advances because the early adopters created it. And then once the early adopters came in and said, you know what? Everybody else started seeing it's a good idea. You started seeing more and more people. And then you got the economy of scale that occurred that started making things cheaper. Now it's like even here today, modern America, part of the things that we see, that enable otherly abled individuals, disabled people across the United States, we create an awful lot of things to make life more convenient for them, wheelchairs and the little reachy things, that go out and grab things. But for a lot of them, the cost benefit didn't achieve until we ended up with an awful lot of lazy people who went, that's a cool idea. I want one of those, even though I'll never ever need it. Or I'm just going to use it for some arbitrary thing because it's more convenient for me to reach that top shelf if I got my little grabby thing. And now there's grabby things that are affordable for everybody. Yeah, but that's the process. That's the way it works. It starts with the early adopters. But until you actually free up the market so that the early adopters can go in and experiment with the tech and learn the tech, where they're not constantly being discouraged by the established industry that's risking, their market share when that new tech finally comes out and goes public. Like right now, central banking, they've been digging on Bitcoin. They've been digging on cryptocurrencies for a long time. They've been trying to regulate them, keep them out of the market, just discourage people from using them for a number of different reasons. And that's because we don't have a free market. We don't have a free currency market even, because the central banks control everything. So how do we go in and we actually start looking at the panarchy model, looking at freeing the market so that crypto can start working in place of the fiat currency that exists by the US, or whether or not we even want to go so far back as to say, whiskey, shots, and bullets, there's the currency of the realm. Go back to the old West style, whatever sells, whiskey and bullets, it means something to me. So I'll trade my services for whiskey and bullets.
You're talking bartering right now, like to barter?
Well, but yeah, that's ultimately what it is. Yeah. And that's where we start getting into the whole mutualism, especially when we start looking at the distributed architectures as they develop across the United States. Okay, you have people who will want to do the commune thing. You'll get your little ska groupies out there, you doing their stinky Mohawk folks in their little random communes. And then you got your gamers who get together for their little LAN, network LAN games, and they've decided to create their own little commune. And now you got a tech center, which the others can start developing off of. And you start developing this mutual aid association based on what each organization or each small community is able to create. And even within the communities, there's people that are able to step up and provide the different things in different ways. So eventually you end up with a distributed horizontal architecture for government networking and communication across the United States, rather than this persistence of a hierarchical organization that says you have to do it this way. So if one area wants to set it up, both of the guidance is
you lost
anarchy,
me,
and cap.
Yeah, but you lost me on the first thing you mentioned was that we have to go back to the Austrian school, and it was that the gentlemen who start technology have an incentive to do so. They want to do so. I think most of the time the reason people want to do so is for their own personal gain. I go eat for my own personal gain because I will live better if I eat healthier or eat high calories because it gives me endorphins, right? Anyway, right. What I'm trying to say is that there's a demand, and maybe that's what the inventors usually are chasing. So that's what the Austrian school would say. It's all based off demand and not necessarily, I may love what I'm doing and that's what my labor skill is going to be best at. So that's different, but I'm not going to be able to bring that to the market effectively unless it's in demand. And then you said if we decentralize. So here's where you lost me. If we decentralize, it's all going to be. If we decentralize, it's all going to be very even instead of a hierarchical system. It's like you kind of you lost me on that. What was the process of okay, let's say we eliminate government. So how does that happen again? Yeah, because
yes,
I don't see how that happens. What I see usually is like, let's say us four go to work and I work 10 hours and everybody works 7. I may get ahead, right, a little faster if we're equal at skill, which no one's equal at skill here. I'm going to be better at something. You guys are going to be better at others. Right. So I don't see how the hierarchy just disappears.
Well, and the hierarchy doesn't disappear. Reason why is because when you start developing the horizontal, you still have the meritocracy that's going on. Okay. Those people who can provide more get more recognition and are able to acquire more, and whether that's in social services, where you're looking at more of a worker oriented, communal basis, or whether it's in property in private property earned and acquired through your anarcho-capitalist particular approach to it, or whether or not it's one of those things where you don't place a greater emphasis on either your social services or on your personal property, and you are actually able to work into a mutualist commune where you're able to trade in order to achieve greater personal happiness without regard to desire for property or desire for more social service. You know, you're able to see without creating a dominant element within the free market environment. And see, that's one of the things where you start getting into trouble with Marx and a lot of the others, is because when they were talking about, you know, socialism versus capitalism, is the second you start using those words, you screw with a free market. Okay? Free market, every market has three things that are involved in it. You got capitalism, you got labor, and you got land. Okay? Second, you say capitalism, you've just weighted the entire economy in favor of capital. Second, you say communism, you've just weighted the entire economy in favor of labor. Second, you start looking at Georgism, you say, oh, well, we just weighted the entire economy in favor of land. So how do you go in and you create a situation where it's truly a free market, where there is no dominance of one of those three elements, so that you can understand and create that balance? And part of that is you got to get away from using words like socialism and communism and even Georgism.
So you're saying by simply changing our linguistic approach, our desire to acquire property as an ANCAP is simply going to vanish.
Words have
of someone who enjoys property. So if I like property and I can't use the word capitalism, my
no, because you still have the pursuit of capital. You know, that's the thing that means something.
So if we eliminate the word capital, or if we all become mute and there is no language, you're saying that we're all not going to want those things.
The thing is, words have meaning. Okay.
Well, listen, lions don't talk, but they do dominate in a hierarchical system. So I don't see how.
In a meritocracy, yes, you have stronger lions that are able to dominate the situation. But in a communal situation, which is what humans are, we are community-based creatures. We are communal. We work, we network, we organize. You know,
I mean, so are chimpanzees, but there's one guy who fucks all the hot bitches, and then there's the other ones who gangbang the ugly ones, you know, and that's how they work out. So it still has.
Yeah. There's that argument, Max. But at the same time,
I think my argument.
How did we achieve?
I think my argument is just that a lot of times, in order to build an equity-based market, we're trying to run away from nature itself, which is a hierarchical system in itself. Like, it's built in our nature. It's not just and linguistics comes from our nature and all those other things.
Here's one of the problems that we got right now with American culture as it stands. Okay, we do not have a meritocracy. We have a kleptocracy. Okay, the people who are at the top are actually drones. 90% of them are useless. In a true chaos, in a true anarchic system, you know, most of them do not have the skills or the capacity to sustain themselves or even be part of a community that they can support. You know, they lack trade skills, they lack professional ability. All they know how to do is talk and tell other people how to accomplish shit. Okay, so when we start looking at how do we start working at the distribution, one is we do get back to an original meritocracy, because in an original meritocracy, people actually have to be able to provide something to the community to continue to be part of the community. It's one of the things that we've gotten away from. And, you know, it's sad because we start taking a look at the lib left, you know, and they go, well, everybody should have this. But if you start looking at the authoritarian left, it's like, if you don't work, you don't eat. You look at the authoritarian right, if you don't work, you don't eat. Even the lib right, you don't work, you don't eat.
Hey,
The
man,
live
if you
left's
look
really
at
the only
nature,
ones
you don't
stepping out
labor,
and
you don't
saying,
eat. If you look at nature,
yeah,
you
exactly.
don't labor, you don't eat. You know, so what you're trying to do
you
is
don't
what I'm
labor, you
saying
don't
is,
eat. You know,
yeah, so
that's a
that's like
natural aspect
nature.
of just
That's
about
like,
everything that's involved.
Okay.
Okay, so when you start looking at a lib left community and organization, you start realizing that there are other things that other people can provide. You don't become dominated by the fact that, you know, they have to be able to go out to, you know, the fields to do the harvest, because there's people who can go out and harvest and create surplus. But the other people who can't go out and harvest still have to be able to provide something of value to the community.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's where you start looking at situations where you're not looking at an economy based on money, but you start to appreciate an economy based on personal happiness.
Okay.
Yeah, the economics of happiness, so to speak. You
That
know,
makes sense.
are we happy with where we live? Do we have adequate shelter? Do I like the space in my shelter? Is the space aesthetic? You know, do I appreciate the things I see in my space? Or am I stuck living in a dump underneath the flight path of the local airport and life is absolutely miserable because I can't get a decent night's sleep 3 nights out of 5?
Mhm.
You know, what is the aesthetic? What is it you're actually looking for? Is it the acquisition of property so that you know that you have the security to go out and barter? Or is it the adoration of the people in your community because you're able to provide those extra things that give them the incentive to create a better aesthetic in your community?
Actually, Joseph,
Yeah, so you start
I,
taking a look at all of this and you go, but, and it all comes back to where we
I
are
think we
right
have
now,
already a lot of
because
that, you know.
there's a pop culture.
I
What?
think we have a lot of that. Like, for example, if I want to go to work, and there's a lot of like the problem is the authoritarians are in our way, right?
exactly.
Like from acquiring true
Right.
happiness and acquiring whatever, whether it's property or anything else. But like if I go on Instagram, or if this video tomorrow gets 1 million likes, I get that happiness from that, you know, and I'm providing some sort of
Yeah.
what is it, a social service to make, you know, just because we talked about libertarianism. Or if I acquire property because I acquired the capital to do so, and that makes me I can still do that in society today. I feel the only thing that's in our way is the taxation, right? So the taxation, the regulation, those sort of things. Yeah, but so you're right. I think without government in the way, it would be a lot easier to do those things. I don't see how. Again, I still fail to see. Maybe it's just me to see how you get rid of the hierarchy system as a whole. You know, it's just some people are going to be more happy, perhaps, to acquire more property, or more happy to acquire more views on Instagram, you know, and so they're just going to be better at it. And then there's always going to be someone like Karl Marx that's going to be like, I want that stuff, you know. It's like, that's not right, you know, like that's it's just, and that's human nature
Karen
too.
laws. Oh my God, the Karen laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of those things, and we deal with it right now. You know, we start taking a look at victimless crimes. You know, the Karen laws. What are the Karen laws? You know, it's like, I don't like that, so there ought to be a law. I don't like that, so there ought to be a law. Well, tough luck, bitch. You know, somebody else does like it, so fuck off already.
Yeah,
Your right to not have to deal with that is not, well, it's not a right.
It's not a right at all.
You got a right to a freedom of expression. I can say and do what I like as long as it's between 2 consenting adults. Okay, God-given right. That's a natural right, 100%. But we got Karen laws. Can't smoke a joint.
Vice crimes.
Law.
Exactly. That's,
you know,
and I think we agree on that, actually. And the point I want
we
to
do
make
on the issues of
real
the Karen
quick
laws.
is,
I mean, that's pretty much across the board.
So,
you know, the Karen laws just need to go away.
They do. Here's the point I wanted to make, so me and Adam can kind of integrate in the discussion as well. Here's what I would say. There'll always be hierarchy because it's central to nature. And Jordan Peterson, I don't like some of his stuff. I really don't like, you know, I've done everything.
I love that shit. I love Jordan Peterson.
My parents hate everything. They don't hate everything. They don't like I'm in the metal band. My mom thinks Bitcoin's a scam. I mean, the whole don't do stuff your parents don't like and sort yourself out actually don't like, because I have a lot of training in Taoism. The point, but he did make some very good observations. Every system to man that we know of has 1% based on competency, luck, vision, and all that stuff. They get to the top for some reason.
Right.
There's always a 1%. The question fundamentally becomes, though, because people have said, well, I don't like Bezos. I don't like, it's not King Cheeto or King Biden or AOC. I would never go to any of those to get a green initiative or a green world. I would say, Elon Musk, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then in my opinion, yeah, he can be at the top of a hierarchy, but Elon Musk is not going to use coercion.
Elon Musk is going to tell you he's mining cobalt in Africa right now. That's what...
You know what? Even though Elon Musk has,
what I want to hear from Elon Musk is that he's mining cobalt from, Ceres and, some asteroid or something. I mean, if you're going to go for it, I mean, friggin' go for it.
Go big.
He's trying to get to Mars, so he might actually find cobalt on other planets. I don't doubt that. And I think the reason there is hierarchy sometimes is not necessarily because it's a little bit of both. I kind of agree with Max and Joe on this. There is a drive. Sometimes you just get hit with this magical inspiration that I want to see humanity move forward like Tesla and stuff. And then there is the demand in the market, which has to come too, because there is a part of me that's like, wow, liberty and consciousness will be fun. This is great. But also there's a demand to get this out there. And I think the demand to me is I need to get the authoritarians out of the way. So A, we don't get in a war with another country. B, we can maybe end the Federal Reserve with JoJo. That's my bet. She's my best bet. I don't know if or a Mosh. And yeah, get this whole polarization thing under control. Yeah, it's kind of a shot in the dark, but I'm not against hierarchy in the sense of someone having more, if you want to call it, resources or competency than someone else, because that'll happen in nature. I'm against hierarchy when it becomes coercive. And as Murray Rothbard said, I define an anarchist society where there's no legal mechanism or method to use coercion against someone. I can't call my Elon isn't going to call his congressman up and say, hey, take out the competitor of driving cars, take out the competitor trying to get to Mars. Because if he really wanted to do that, he would go after Bezos, who's launched a space program at the same time. So to me, that's actually the king. It's not Trump and Biden probably don't know that much about the environment at all. But I would like to see hierarchies of like, okay, we make even a Jedi Council format of Elon Musk, Jill Stein, Dr. George.
The Jedi Council.
Yeah, Jedi Council with like JoJo, Jill Stein, Howie Hawkins, Elon Musk, and maybe like, I don't know, Gary Johnson, and then have them, we can have discussions based on that. Does that help? Is that how panarchy?
I don't know, Adam. What do you think, Adam?
What do I think? I've been very quiet for most of this conversation. And there's a certain element to this where everything we've been talking about so far is so incredibly hypothetical and beyond what is available to achieve in front of us that I almost don't know how to engage, because I'm a very pragmatic thinker. What are the concrete steps right in front of us to create a more free, more just, more prosperous world? So these hypothetical arrangements, once we achieve anarchy, they almost seem like, we're just in a circle jerk here about whose anarchist society vision is better. And I like a lot of what all of you have said, especially Joseph. I think we're kindred spirits in a couple of ways here. But circling all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, if we want to have a society that has free or a free market solution to green energy, we need to begin to dispel some of the myths and the demonization around certain forms of green energy, particularly nuclear. Because there's absolutely no way we can power an economy and a society that lives the way we live currently with solar and wind turbines. I mean, they're going to be part of the process, I'm sure, But there's nothing that's going to have the future-oriented long-term solutions that nuclear is going to. The problem is, and not to pick on our friends in the Green Party, because I'm very friendly with the Green Party. They always sign my petitions and I sign theirs. We have several prominent Green Party leaders and even prominent libertarians who spread complete misinformation about the dangers of nuclear power. And they seize on tragedies like Fukushima to try to scare the public into thinking that it's like this devastatingly dangerous thing, when new nuclear technologies are being developed all the time. And even the model of nuclear power we have today, which is based off of the contract that our United States military had with a certain company to build fuel rod reactors for submarines, right? That's become the model for most nuclear power plants, which is not the most efficient or safe way to do it, right? From the very beginning of nuclear power, there have been safer and more efficient ways to do this. And today, I was just reading in Popular Mechanics the other day, they've got these micro nuclear reactors, there are thorium reactors. There's all sorts of cool stuff that could completely pave a future that that Tesla couldn't have dreamed of. And they're all free market solutions, but the thing with the free market is, like, we need to inform the public. We need to teach the public so that consumers are making educated decisions. And so one of the ways we can make a more efficient and effective, push in the free market is for labor to organize. If labor comes together and says nuclear is good, it's good for us, it's good for you, it's safe, we wouldn't be banding behind it if we thought all of our people were going to be in danger, right? Then we have a very solid voice for consumer sense. If the people who are involved in creating and producing this are banded together. And that's when we talk about libertarian right versus libertarian left, for me, it all comes down to labor and the emphasis and the value put on our laborers and their right to organize.
I think what's interesting about you were just saying about the labor being the spokesperson. I feel that correct me if I'm wrong, but most nuclear reactors are ran hand in hand with government, correct?
Well, right now, yeah, there's a lot of government subsidies that go into it because government is just kind of throwing money at all these different green energy models. But the government doesn't really care about the environment. They care about their corporate cronies. Whose pockets are they padding, right? And if there are some very wealthy, capital holders who want to run nuclear power plants, well, they're going to be brushing shoulders with congressmen, or at least their lobbyists will be, and that's going to push nuclear, or it's going to push solar, or it's going to push wind. And so when the conversation is based solely around who owns the capital, whoever has the capital, their business is going to be the one that gets the government, favor, right? Which is why labor as a counterbalance to capital in a free market is so critical.
Interesting.
Okay.
I mean, I think labor has capital. Labor could be weighed in capital. I mean, after all, but we talk about that quite often.
The ideal libertarian society, if I can dream.
Careful there, Mac, because one of the things we start looking at when we start measuring labor as capital is the whole human capital issue. Remember that little gaffe from my God, I can't even remember, our human capital's ready to get back to work. But when it comes down to it, and this is where we start getting into the whole Workers' Party, the International Workers' Party, the Trotskyism, that says workers of the world unite. Well, the problem is the workers of the world can't unite because you always got the Vanguard Party. The Vanguard Party always directs how the workers of the world are going to unite and what their primary mission is. Where we run into problems is from a libertarian. How do you legislate freedom of association? You don't.
You don't, yeah.
You don't.
You don't. Okay, so when we go around
organic.
like Idaho, half the states in the United States right now have right to work legislation. Okay?
I like that.
No, right to work is garbage.
Well, no, it's bullshit because it's legislation. You legislated freedom of association. That doesn't work. Okay.
Right.
You've created a barrier to the way people are allowed to associate. The second you created right to work legislation. Okay. Now, I have no problem with unions as long as they're local, because local unions understand local economies. They understand local environments. They understand the community they grow up and live in. When you start looking at national organizations, you start looking at the Teamsters. When the Teamsters come in and they say they're going to organize your local labor for you, you know you're about to get fucked. I mean, royally fucked up the ass, because that's what the Teamsters do when they come in and organize local labor.
Exactly.
I mean,
Okay,
that's
so
what
how
happened in
do you-
Detroit. That's what happened in the car industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
happens
independence can
everywhere
work,
you
like
have
you're
a
saying.
national or international workers organization step in and say, we're going to unionize you.
Well, now,
You
Joseph,
know,
you wouldn't
because you're no
suggest,
longer being organized by the workers.
you wouldn't suggest, Joseph.
What was that, Adam?
There seems to be a bit of a lag. I apologize, and I hate to break in, but you wouldn't suggest that it is the role of the government to break up the Teamsters or to ban, unionization at any level, right? It's up to the workers themselves and up to consumers who are communicating to the laborers, what the best model for labor organization is. So if there is a kind of large centralized, quasi-authoritarian labor structure, then local unions should organize against that, as much as they should organize against the crony partnership between state and capital holders, right? It all comes down to labor and consumers. Those are the two biggest forces in the free economy. And the only reason that both labor and consumers right now are like so much lower on the totem pole than these massive capital holders and shareholders and such is because the government's engineered an economy that's in favor of capital holders.
Exactly.
I mean, what else are you going to use other than currency? But what else would you use in order to?
On a fiat currency right now, Max. You know,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin. If they have more of it, it's going to work like that.
No one's
against more lobbying money. I know you guys agree with this. I know you guys agree with this. If they have more, it doesn't matter the currency. It could be capped. It could be Bitcoin. It could be gold. It could be a fart in the wind. If they have more of it, they're gonna be the bigger lobbyists. The issue is that the government exists in the beginning. Okay, I don't see the market itself being the issue. I don't see the market being the issue at all. I see the government interfering in the market being the issue, because again, if unions are better in a free economy, they will succeed. They will 100% outdo the decentralized workforce 10 out of 10 times if they are better, right?
Well, Max, I'm not sure if anybody here has said that the problem is with markets. I mean, markets are the fundamental way that human beings coordinate with each other.
But you said that the market based on capital, right? So it doesn't matter what the capital is.
Well, no. The capital is just a way we talk about the accumulation of resources. What I'm talking about is, in our particular model, the people who hold the most capital hold the most sway. And they hold all this capital by design of a government that has created an economic regulatory structure that has funneled that capital into their pockets and shielded them from failure time and time again. The laborers, they can fail, they can get fired, they can go out of business, the things can collapse, but the capital holders, the shareholders, they're basically immune. Unless they're engaged in some really risky prospecting with their money. So this is a problem. Like when we talk about the libertarian socialist critique of capitalism, it's that government and capital have cozied up to each other so much that it's created a whole class of undefeatable people who control.
Well, if government failed and there was no government, then
if
those
government
people
failed, then we could just eat the rich, right? I mean, I don't want to see that. Right? I want to.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. If government failed, these businesses wouldn't be around because the taxpayer pays for their failures, right? So these people would have been long ago just completely, would have fell apart. Correct?
I'm still watching. I just need to grab my power charger because my computer's dying.
Well, what I'm saying is, you keep mentioning capital being the issue, and it's just people chasing capital. This is like random people just chasing capital. Jeff Bezos is a human too, right? So I again, he would not have so much capital if it wasn't for all the subsidies and the protectionism, et cetera, right? So
Yeah,
I
that's
exactly my point.
I just don't see how the capital is the problem.
Yeah. And this is even the big
But see,
tech
that's one of
argument.
those things that we get back into, and why we push anarchy so much in the libertarian circles, is because government regulation is what causes the problem, whether the government regulations favor labor or whether the government regulations favor capital. You get the government out of the regulations where they no longer favor either of those. The regulations just go away. There's no longer any right to work legislation. There's no longer rules about the way money can be spent or the way people interact. There's no longer any rules about whether or not a business has to pay the city a licensing fee in order to open their doors to sell their products. You start opening up that freedom of association, and the people who chase capital will create things to sell. So the people will come and give them money. Okay, you start looking at people who are more labor centric. They will create services to sell. Whether that's selling their time as a carpenter, and they decide to become part of an association or a guild or a union, the carpenters union. And it's a locals union that says, well, we need so much to live. And as long as they're not using coercive force, saying you have to pay us whether we produce something for you or not, the freedom of association of the union continues to be successful. Where we've run into problems in the past with the unions is, go ahead.
Let me ask, I like that. I like that a lot. I agree with everything you just said there. And I just wanted to ask you, let's say Adam and I, we just spoke about that, the energy company we were talking about, right? So let's say the energy company forms a union and, locally, or, it's a lot bigger than locally these days. So if they just took over where we left off, so, the whole state is ran on like one union now, right? Or maybe it gets split up, it doesn't matter. But if, let's say, they all go on strike because they want more money, and the people say no, the demand isn't there, right? Like they're like, no, well, they could kind of hold them like, okay, we'll just shut off your power. So that's coercive.
That's coercive. But one of the things is you open up the free markets and you start taking a look at other options. Right now we have one power company that, it creates relatively cheap power. But one of the things we have right now is regulations that prevents you from going off grid.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to run a micro power plant in your backyard. You have your micro turbines for your little area, your wind chimes, that's running in the spring, out of your natural spring on your property, or you've got some other way, your solar power that's on your roof. We have legislation, we have regulations all across the United States that prevent people from being able to maximize that personal use. And we continue to have problems with that because we aren't able to put enough early adopters into the system because of those regulations for that stuff to actually become affordable. So if you were looking at microgridding, so our community, we want to set up our little anarcho commune. Everybody's out chasing their own profit, but we've got one person who's been able to come up with a system to give every house its own individual power grid, and you're able to network. So if somebody surges a little extra power, somebody can sell their bonus power to, or somebody needs more, somebody can sell their bonus power. You got that little system where you've decided how you want to exchange that. Or you're running a more communal arrangement, and it's like everybody contributes to the same power pool. And whoever's using it is using it, whoever isn't, and everybody's happy. But you have created these microgrids. So you're no longer dependent upon this central organization that's providing the power. California Power Company, whatever, the PCP, or who I'm talking about.
PCP.
The ones who burnt down the West last year. The ones who burnt down the West last year.
Yeah.
They're no longer in control of the power.
Dude, that was global warming. What are you talking about?
Oh man,
I thought it was space lasers, directed energy.
Space lasers. You saw that the way they did that right there, tic-tac-toe.
it's like getting to Alex Jones territory here. But let me ask you,
fucking lizards.
Yeah, lizards. But here, actually, I want to take this because Adam brought up a good point. Actually take it off the hypothetical, because this is something I've been wondering about, wanted to ask you all. I even asked Adam this during one of our meetings, is that I like all this, the hypothetical and companies and stuff, but first we have to get the D's and R's out of the way. Now, even though me and Max are like, okay, maybe Trump got something right, I don't see a lot of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, libertarian right guys like, oh, I like the authoritarian right, except a few fringe people, but I could be wrong.
But they're not like, dude, they're not even with the laissez-faire, bro.
Yeah. I pulled Trumpsters, and I've actually been able to get Trumpsters further than my minarchist professor in less than an hour. I'm like, do we defund the Pentagon? They're like, yeah, let's decentralize national defense. Just figure out how you do it and let me know. I'm like, this is good. So here's my question on the libertarian left. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I would defund the Pentagon and do a Jedi style council thing. I like your idea about, I'll figure out some blockchain thing to stop people from invading people. AI works. But anyway, everyone thinks I'm nuts now. But here's my problem. I do see there's maybe more of an inkling on the libertarian left to go to the authoritarian left. And to prove this, I went to Antifa's website during the campaign. Someone showed me this. I went to Biden-Harris. They don't really like them. There are people who support Elizabeth Warren. She stuck up for the stockholders after the game stonks thing. So my question to you guys is, and I could be wrong, is there more of like a pipeline to the libertarian left, to the authoritarian left? If I'm wrong, that's fine. But like Adam was saying, the people who want $15 an hour, people who want, more greener initiatives can't find the Libertarian Party. Is there a way to get them to go to the Green Party, to go to more decentralized solutions? And I would postulate something I could do now is like, hey, I'm going to go talk to BLM, Antifa, all those people. If they still want to be rooted in decentralization, let's talk about Bakunin. Let's talk about Peter Kropotkin.
Right. If I might jump in.
They'll tell you stop being so white.
I'm not.
Let me jump in here for a minute.
Okay.
I have a lot of friends in the libertarian left, right? Yeah. Some of my closest friends were involved in the founding of the Libertarian Socialist Caucus, and they're good people. They're genuine libertarians. And frankly, compared to a lot of people on the lib right, they're far more anarchists. Like, they don't want to have conversations about UBI or wage law or universal health care. They want to abolish it all and replace it with mutual aid networks and community-based solutions. They're actually some of the biggest, most beautiful dreamer idealists in the party. And they get terribly misunderstood. And part of that is, certain spokespersons for their caucus have not done a great job. And most of those people, by the way, have either left out of frustration or they were pushed out by the caucus because they weren't representing the caucus well. So there really is no lib left to auth left pipeline, as there quite is in our party with the lib right auth right pipeline. There's a much more active pipeline going in both directions. What's that, Max?
It's just, I agree with you. There's a pipeline in both. First off, there's a pipeline in both.
Being fairly friendly with people in that category. And by the way, I just want to make sure for anyone watching, I am a strictly non-ideological libertarian. I am a libertarian that cares only about the nuts and bolts of electioneering, getting libertarians elected. Whether you are left or right libertarian doesn't matter to me. If you're getting elected and you're changing policy, we're achieving a freer world, right? And so all of us together create this freer world together. And maybe one day when we have scaled back the size of the states and we have created an economy that is genuinely free, then we can fight about these more niche issues. Then we can maybe divide into two separate libertarian parties. But until that day happens, we're stuck with each other. Because no one else is talking
really.
about the size of the state and
Well,
decreasing.
Adam,
Actually, no, I agree.
you're right, Adam. You're absolutely right, 100%. It doesn't matter how we're looking at things right now. The authoritarians, whether they're off left or off right, are in control of the way business is done in the United States right now. Okay, so whether you're left libertarian or right libertarian, anything that changes policy in a more libertarian manner is a good.
Nice.
Exactly.
We start seeing more freedom. We start seeing more. So, and I'm with Adam 100% as far as the pragmatic approach, in that I don't care whether or not your libertarian approach is more Hoppian, despite the fact, they are what they are, or whether you're looking more Bookchin or Bakunin, Kropotkin, Rothbardian, if you're moving it in the liberty direction, I want to see you in office.
Nice.
Once we're actually down there in the nuts and bolts where we're looking at where the liberty left and the liberty right start to divide, it's like, you got a city over there, go prove your concept over in Boise.
Well, that's the beauty in libertarianism. It's like you live in Idaho. Like you live in Idaho, right? And I'm moving to Florida in like less than 30 days, right? So I'll be in Southwest Florida. You'll be in Idaho. Obviously, people in Southwest Florida are going to gravitate towards, a capitalist system. Where you are in Idaho, I'm not sure how they're going to lean. The point is that if we both get there, like I don't have to go impose on you, and you don't have to come impose on me. And if we do, then we're just starting authoritarianism again, right? So we don't want to do that. And so you're right. Towards the end, we could split. What's that?
If the group I'm living with is different enough from my philosophical approach, and I disagree, it's like,
don't gotta live there, man. You know what I mean? You could leave. You could change it from within.
More agreeable.
A big thing about the R's and D's. I just want to mention about the R's and D's. Like, I'll vote for a Democrat if she is a libertarian like Tulsi Gabbard. I will vote for Rand Paul because he is way more, because there's a chance of becoming a realist to the point where there's a utopia over there for all of us, right? But like in the immediate, what can we do? Mm-hmm. Like if a senator runs for president who is a libertarian or a representative is really, really strong and she's knocking the wind out of the sails for some of those people like Kamala Harris, I'm going to probably vote for that. Listen, I would have voted Tulsi Gabbard over Trump any single day. But there is a pipeline on both sides. Mm-hmm. There's a pipeline on both sides to it. And it was evident in the voting turnout, if it was accurate at all, right? It was pretty evident because you saw the libertarian numbers lower, even though we did join forces more than ever. And you saw the record turnout for both the Biden. And so you saw a lot of libertarian rights, libertarian right, libertarian lefts that, it was like, oh my God, the fate of the universe is at stake. So they just, crumbled to the authoritarians at the last second. And they're still in these chats and these group chats, freaking debating like they actually believe what they're saying or sharing like anarchist things. They don't believe it, man. They voted Biden, but they voted Trump. They don't believe what they're saying. Look, I was sitting in front of that ballot, dude. I live in New Jersey right now. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't want to vote for any of these motherfuckers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, dude, Joe Jorgensen, Mike, Max Henry, Max Henry, all the way down. You know what I mean? Because I am the captain of my ship, and that's it. I don't want someone ahead of me. You know what I mean? I live in my house. They don't, there's a whole thing of private property, which is interesting in a commune. I want to ask you about that.
Well, Max, you did vote for Joe Jorgensen, right?
Of course, dude. I haven't. The last time I voted Republican was Ron Paul. You know what I mean? That's the last time I was a registered any other way. And even listen, I would have registered Democrat last second if Tulsi Gabbard was on that ticket. I would have done it over Joe Jorgensen because that was a better chance. You know, if she was there instead of Biden, I would have chose her ahead of everyone just because she had a better chance. I knew more people were just going to go the whole blue wave thing, you know. So I was going to jump on that bandwagon and try to get Tulsi, sweet Tulsi. So beautiful, you know? so I would have voted for her or Rand Paul or anyone, dude. So I'm not opposed to libertarians outside of the Libertarian Party running in the D's and R's if they could infiltrate. One thing I learned about Marxists is they will infiltrate and take baby steps to have the house crumble. Okay, they will take their time. It may be generations. So I don't care if it happens in whatever party. I don't care what the name is. I don't care. I just want a freer world. And whatever the best chance is to do that, I'll do that. And you know, that's the one thing I learned about the para-Marxists.
Well, I've got a simple philosophy when it comes to voting. And it's this. If there's a libertarian on the ballot, I vote for them. If there's not a libertarian on the ballot, but there is another third party or an independent, I'll vote for them. It used to be that if there's an R or a D only on a line, I would do my research and pick the one that is most liberty oriented, but I've given up on that. I will never vote for an R or a D again in my life. And I do this on principle.
100%.
If there is no R or D, I write someone in. And, you know, there are many write-in campaigns. There was one here in Pennsylvania. Paul Swalina was running for Congress, and he did make the ballot, unfortunately, but he ran a very good write-in campaign. I wrote him in. And on the ballot line where we had no write-in candidates and no one on the ballot, I wrote in Vermin Supreme because he's our very own Libertarian Party Mickey Mouse. You know,
yeah, he's our mascot.
Yeah. I love Vermin. So here's my question, actually.
He's awesome.
I was looking at Twitter and actually brought this up to Max, and he said, like, no, or I don't know. I think we disagreed on that, but you saw the tweet with BLM saying, "Hey, Joe, we've been trying to get a hold of you. We're tired of waiting." And a lot of people who are ANCAPs with me are like, don't say anything. And I'm like, wait, to me, these are like customers that say, like, I've been disenfranchised. I'm not happy with what I have. So my question actually is, there are some people still voting for D's and R's, and I'll never vote for a DNR again. I just won't vote if I have to. I agree with you 100%, Adam. I'll either vote Libertarian, Green, Constitutional, or Independent. Or if not, I'll just throw the ballot away. But since we have this conversation, these discussions, would it be worth the time to reach out, if it's at all possible, because I've thought of this multiple times, to go speak to Antifa or BLM and try and get them at least
that's already happening,
Party.
But that's already happening. That's been happening. I think that's been happening for like years. Am I not right, guys? Like,
I marched with Black Lives Matter march back in 2014. You know, before it ever grew into any kind of organization or kind of gained the unfortunate stigma it's gained. I marched with them back in 2014 because as a libertarian, I saw this is a very big point of commonality, that we recognize that the criminal justice system, by focusing on certain nonviolent crimes, disproportionately affected certain communities, usually of various minority demographics. And you know, in before anyone claims like cultural Marxism or identity politics, like this is the same shit Ron Paul was saying back in 1980 something. You know, he got up there and said the drug war was designed to be racist. So, like, you know, even the godfather of liberty, who, you know, I got into this movement because of Ron Paul. I no longer idolize the man because I don't do hero worship, and I recognize problems even with our best people. But it's the single best way to tell any right libertarian that race is still a thing in politics. And it's worth talking about, because when you validate a community's particular suffering and they believe that you hear them and you care about them, well, you win a whole swath of people to your cause. And Spike Cohen proved this when he got out on the ground and was able to unify elements of Black Lives Matter and elements of the Boogaloo movement, got them to stand together and say, we're all on the same team. And that's what libertarians need to do. We need to be able to say, I hear you, I see your pain, here are the solutions. And I see you and I hear your pain, here are the solutions. Oh my gosh, they happen to be the same solutions for both of you groups. Like, come together. These two big parties are not here for you, but we are.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's
okay. So that goes back, and we start digging into history on this. Okay, because this is the first time something like that happened. Okay, we start looking back at the 1960s and 1970s. The ground truth of the libertarian movement when the Libertarian Party was founded in 1972. Okay, you were on the back end of the civil rights movement, the Rothbardians, and most of the other liberty founders were very much coming out with the liberty platform because of anti-racism, LGBTQ activism. It was like all rights are human rights, and as much as I hate going back to Ayn Rand because she ultimately was racist, one of her biggest and best quotes is the smallest minority is the individual. So the liberty platform has been, since its inception, the most anti-racist platform in existence in American politics.
Let's call it pro-civil rights.
Because we want to go, but the reason why Rothbard and most of the others in that area distanced themselves from the civil rights movement was because rather than taking the anarcho-capitalist route, of the Rothbardians and the Friedmans and the others, they decided to take, the Kropotkin route. They decided to call themselves socialists. And you had the card-carrying socialists of the Rainbow Coalition, the Young Patriots, the Young Lords, and the Black Panthers that all assembled in Chicago under this idea of what was essentially Bookchin or left libertarian movement, because it was community oriented and driven. Okay,
well, it's a shame that faction was not, more welcomed in the party. We did have left libertarian voices at the foundation of the party, and that's a part of the history that kind of gets lost in conversation. But they were not a strong enough presence in the party that the Black Panthers, for example, would feel comfortable uniting with us. Because when I think of like the best example of libertarianism in action in American history, it was the Black Panther movement, because they formed their own mutual aid networks to provide health care for their people outside of the government. They had armed security that was not government sanctioned stormtroopers that would protect their people, not only from wrongdoers within, but from the police community without. Like they did the libertarian thing for us. Like they proved our case. And yet they did not.
The left libertarian case.
Well, but the fundamental premise of freedom working and communities and individuals together being able to come up with their own solutions outside of government, even despite government oppression, they were able to have thriving and successful communities until the state came and crushed them.
I feel like I want to just chime in a little bit. In the 1960s, with Lyndon B. Johnson, we all kind of know what kind of guy that was. When he created the Great Society, when he created the Great Society and he implemented authoritarian socialism, we could call it, just to provide some distinction from libertarian left. when he provided heavy socialism, they gave $50,000 in today's money to women without a parent in the household. So this spiked up the divorce rate. And of course, if you spike up the divorce rate, back then, blacks were as married as as much as whites. So the rate of marriage was the same. The way the rate of single parent households was very low, and from the beginning of that, they kind of pushed into it. So you're going to see if there is racism, of course, it usually happens from the government first, rather than the free market, because the only thing that matters to the free market is green. That's the only color of green we care about on the liberal right side. But what happens is, in the Great Society, so you're spiking this single parent household, and then the children grow without a father. And I don't know if any of you guys grew without a father. I haven't, but a lot of my friends have. And crime is more prevalent in those households. That's what the data shows. So now, crime becomes a resource. Why is crime even more prevalent? Well, crime is more prevalent because, one, you don't have the father to beat it out of you. Two, because it's a source of income. The mother's working, she's not there to raise you. She's not, she's trying to provide. She's married to the government at this point, who is giving her like the most minimal paycheck they possibly can, not even trying to really help her get out of poverty. They're like hooking her in, almost like poverty pimps, one could consider. So now you have these children going out for a source of income, and even the women, maybe they were involved in a vice crime like prostitution, trying to pay their bills. Then you have the crack epidemic, which is pushed into those neighborhoods specifically, and people are going to sell it naturally because that's a source of income. We're poor, we need to get this income. Now it's very evident that if you grab a two-parent household, they make more money than a one-parent household with or without government involvement. So naturally they fall to the bottom of the 20%, and that now they qualify for and they don't try to get out of it too far because, of course, they're subsidized to be in it by the government. So they resort to all these vice crimes like selling drugs, et cetera, sometimes violent crimes. And of course, who's there to apprehend them is the state paid police and federally paid police. And they go in and they wrap them up. And now you have this vicious cycle because that kid that kid who grew up and got arrested as a man who may have children is never going to be there for that child because he's constantly in the legal system and handicapped by the legal system. He can't vote. If he's a felon, he can't. He's handicapped his whole life, and he handicaps his child, and that child grows. So you're gonna find very few success stories. Like one that comes to mind, if you guys like football, is Marshawn Lynch, who grew up with a mother who gave him everything she possibly could, but she was she was there when she could be there, and that guy got out of the hood of Oakland, California. And then there's a lot that don't. Now, So this whole systemic racism has more to do with the government itself and its programs, which is authoritarian socialism, as we'll call it, than it did the private market, which sometimes is being blamed. Capital is racist. This is racist. There's a lot of racism, and once everything's racism, we're gonna cry wolf one too many times. Okay, so
right.
If we could point to something that's truly racist, it's that system itself.
I want to push back.
In today's society, this is the most prevalent form of racism still around because we're not in the 1960s anymore. We're not, Reagan's not hosing people down anymore. Okay, what's happening today is the social. Listen, when I was a kid, when I first had my son, I didn't have $40,000 to go have him at the hospital, so I jumped on welfare because I was a young little Marxist, right? And so I saw how they treated just males. It didn't even matter my race. It was also about sex. It was all, and that comes from government institutions, which is interesting.
Yeah. I want to push back only slightly because a lot of what you said, Max, is really right on the money. crime in minority communities is not, I think, principally rooted in the lack of father figures, but
It's a form of income. It's a
Well,
form of income.
what I'm saying is, in this feedback loop, chicken or the egg, right? The start is the government interference in the community that had driven those communities to need to resort to behaviors that were considered criminal in order to survive. Right? We have the issues of redlining and segregation and things which ghettoized certain racial groups into communities. And then those communities had to turn to things that were considered criminal, which we all agree shouldn't have been considered criminal, right? The reason there's a crack epidemic is because cocaine was prohibited, right? When you prohibit certain vices, worse vices emerge to take their place. And then those are criminalized. And you know which are criminalized harder, the vices that are chosen by the less desirable communities, which in this country in our history tended to be communities of color. So there is indeed an enormous removal of Black and brown communities of the father figures. But that doesn't then create the criminal problem, right? It exacerbates it, right? Because
if you change the race,
let me finish, my thought here. A single parent household is oftentimes, especially in an economically depressed community, less stable. And here's a great example from my own life. Two parents, two white parents, two white kids. We went to a private Christian school. My brother was in the bathroom stalls of that private Christian school selling airsoft rifles, pocket knives, and cigarettes and candy, probably. And so he got busted by the school. And you know what we got? A slap on the wrist. He didn't get, sent, the police didn't come, they didn't arrest him. They didn't get, the same criminal response that perhaps a young Black student might have received in our school. So white privilege, like, it exists. I mean, maybe
I feel to see how that's a great point of white privilege, simply because that may have been his first offense. First off, that may have been his first offense.
It wasn't his first or his last offense.
Second, you guys would have a lot more money for a lawyer because there's two parents. You would have more money for a lawyer because there's two parents. So a kid that only has one parent doesn't have enough funds for one.
We didn't have money for a good lawyer. We just got lucky. And
I mean, if you grab the house income,
we didn't have money for a lawyer.
I mean, you're going by assumption, saying it was white privilege. I don't see how you could prove it.
Okay. Proof is impossible in any given situation. But my point is that even in a two-parent, lily white, comfortable household going to a private Christian school, there was crime in the family that did not result in anybody going to jail. Whereas in economically depressed and communities of color, it is a much higher chance that if there's a crime in the family, somebody is getting crucified for it. And that means the removal of a parent, and usually the father. That means the removal of an income stream. So we have this multi-generational problem that is adequately described as systemic racism. And it's a libertarian issue that we as a party have missed this ship by a long shot to talk about these issues and to be part of the conversation. And every time we as a libertarian party and a movement do not decide to wade into these issues because maybe they're too identity politics or there's too many people on the left involved in it, we miss this opportunity to pull in all these people and make this party more balanced and more effective at actually addressing the problems that we're facing together.
Okay. Let me chime in a little bit on this because we're talking a lot about whether it's authoritarian socialism or another form of authoritarianism. Yes, the state primarily originates in, racial disparities one way or another. To me, how you fix most of this actually is I haven't seen any security guards. I haven't seen anyone in the private sector display this, as Max was talking about. I do agree, Adam. There's probably some cops who probably, it's possible they have some, bias based on preconceived notions. So the problem is these cops, though, have protections that nobody can take away because of qualified immunity and that stuff. So when people ask me, are there good cops? I say, yes, security guards and sheriffs. And I would be totally fine, actually, with getting rid of either most of the cops, getting rid of qualified immunity, civil asset forfeiture, things like that. And I studied the George Floyd case, if you guys took a look at that. And the problem was, he had an injury or some kind. I didn't look exactly how. Then they go, here's fentanyl. Well, I'm in pain. If I'm in pain, I'm gonna take any painkiller. If it's bad enough, I'm sure I'd take Oxycontin. I'm sure I
He
would.
also had a man kneel on his neck for nearly 9
Yes. So, and here's the problem, though, that he was taking fentanyl. He had an opioid addiction, and that's not something you can just be like, I'll walk that off. So then he starts doing all this crazy stuff because the state prescribed him literally some what I would call like low-level heroin. That's what opioids are, in my opinion. I'm not a chemist, but maybe Joe can correct me if I'm wrong. And then he gets literally this impulse. Chauvin comes up. He's scared to death because he's like, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail. I have drugs in my system. If we just reduce the drug war or get rid of the drug war penalties, we can probably solve a lot of these racial disparities and at the same time privatize police.
He did get pulled over for a counterfeit bill. So if we remove the Fed, he would have never even got pulled over.
Yes, sure. Remove the Fed, get rid of the drug war,
so
privatize police. I'm fine, actually, if we got rid of police tomorrow and I give my friend a shotgun and say, I will give you half Ethereum to patrol the neighborhood with a shotgun. You see anything, put it in a database. You let me know.
Kareem, if police behaved the way the fire companies behave,
yes,
that they only were summoned when there was some kind of violent incident, we would eliminate much of this. And our modern day police system was formed during the slavery era. The concept of the patrolman didn't exist in Western culture until there were people patrolling for runaway slaves. So our very policing system in this country was designed for racist intent. And even though today we're very far beyond the days of slavery, we've come a long way, don't get me wrong. Like I thank the Lord, as a good Christian man, that we have come to the lengths that we have. But the system that was put in place is still doing the thing it was designed to do. That is putting black and brown people behind bars when they get out of line. And we'd solve a lot of this by eliminating the drug war. We'd solve a lot of it by reforming our police system, that they would be a responsive and not a patrolling force. We'd solve a lot of this with civilian review boards, which, by the way, most of these talking points are talking points that emerged out of the early Black Lives Matter conversation, the Project Zero initiative, and their 10-point plank for police reform. That was something that when I ran for state senate as a libertarian, I seized and said, this is my criminal justice reform platform. It's what they said. And all of those points were completely consistent with libertarian views.
Guys, I want to play devil's advocate real quick. I want to play devil's advocate. I'm totally in favor of qualified immunity. Basically, I just want to dismantle it down to where, there's nothing really there in a form of a police force. As a white man, I have been arrested. Okay, I have been arrested, guys. So that they do go after anyone. But if I am to play devil's advocate just to see what you guys' response is on this, I'm gonna ask Joseph or Adam, anyone. If we eliminate vice crimes, right? That's like the biggest thing, right? And you just analyze violent crimes, okay? And then you use the demographics at this point on which race commits more violent crimes per capita. What race is that? All right, so there you go.
Wait.
You see,
Well, no,
what race
none of
per
us
capita?
answered.
What race per
Okay,
capita?
in-
What
in-
race per capita?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You cannot take it in a vacuum, in the way that you're doing it right now, Max. Reason why is because you got the systemic problem that continues to go on.
It's the
Racism
poverty.
and
I think
violence
it
is not
has to do with
inherent
the poverty.
in any one race. It's inherent in the way we approach the culture. Now, Black Wall Street, that's proof that anarcho-communism works. Okay. It was proven by a Black community in Oklahoma. Anarcho-communism works. No, anarcho-capitalism works. Black Wall Street was an anarcho-capitalist Black community that succeeded until the state decided to interfere. And they were
Correct.
doing that without crime. They weren't running black markets. They weren't running prostitution. They were legitimate businesses selling materials. Okay, so we've had Black communities in America prove that anarcho-capitalism can be successful. Okay, we take a look at the Black Panthers. We take a look at the Young Lords. We have had Black communities in America prove that anarcho-communism and anarcho-socialism work, because they've had to operate independent of the government in order to secure their safety, in order to secure the livelihood of their families and their children. Okay, we've proven anarcho-capitalism works. We've proven anarcho-socialism works, and we owe that to the Black communities in American history. Okay, every one of those communities was absolutely destroyed by our hierarchical arrangement. And they've gone in and systematically torn them down and created situations where they've been forced, to commit violence against each other, because that's who's convenient to be violent against.
Correct.
Rather than actually going out and
because there's no resources available to you, because it's taken away by the state. They build a culture without any regard for your neighbor, and there you go.
Okay.
So there's also a great deal of
you manufacture scarcity and people start doing stupid shit to survive.
What's that?
Okay, we take a look across America right now. We have manufactured food deserts in the inner cities. These are manufactured. Insurance companies have gone in and said, we will not insure this company unless you put up these barriers and this, and it creates barriers to entry, creating food deserts in inner cities. Okay, now they have to pay extra for their food just because of the way it works. They got to leave the community. Now you got a Black man from an inner city going out to the suburbs because of the regulations. Okay, now they're living in the inner city. Most of the places they go to work, they don't need a car to go to because they're using public transportation. Public transportation isn't taking them out to the suburbs where they got the nice little grocery stores that don't have glass windows and selling them substandard fucking Frito garbage. You're actually able to go out. So we have manufactured scarcity in the inner cities. We have manufactured scarcity in minority demographic community, over policed communities. We have manufactured that scarcity. And this is one of those situations because of the regulation. If we were to go in and deregulate the way businesses are ran, okay, we would allow indigenous people to open their own grocery stores on the reservations. We would allow Black people in Black communities to open up their own grocery stores in inner cities.
But who owns a lot of those grocery stores right now? That's a good an example. Who owns those stores? It's not white people.
Well, there really aren't a whole lot of stores to own in these communities. I mean, a lot of these places, the only place where they can go and get groceries is like a local, gas station, 7-Eleven type model.
What we call bodega. So a lot of the Spanish people run it. A lot of it's not white people that are running those stores. It's not like they seize those assets.
And the thing is, like, who ultimately?
But why is it not like if it's systemically racism from a white privilege standpoint? Why is it that those stores aren't ran by white people?
Well, they're not run by Black people either, Max. That's
right. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. If the Indian guy,
massive chain of corporations and the corporations that own those, smaller.
We were talking
units,
about the little gas station on the corner, right? So like,
and most of those
are.
are incorporated. Most of those are incorporated in some kind of chain, which is ultimately owned by predominantly
it's a franchise.
shareholders.
Your Wawa, it's a franchise.
So that's the ones we're going to talk about. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but
no, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about like the other half.
Right. You're talking about the other half. Like right here in Boise, we happen to have about 36 different minority-owned grocery stores. The Asian Market, the Far Eastern Spice Place. The thing is
the Arabics do very well. Honestly, around where I'm from,
they are. They're actually doing pretty good.
Here's what I'd say. Like listening to all of this.
But where's the racism there? Like, why isn't it is it just black people that these white supremacists hate and not any other color? Because I'm pretty sure they hate everyone, dude. Like, they're just haters, bro. They're just white supremacists are just fucking haters, right?
There are degradations of it across the spectrum, right? There are those who carry the tiki torches and they march and they hate the Jews and they hate the people of color, right? There are those folks, but then there are, the softer, more passive racist forces in our culture that just seek to prop up the systems that keep people of color down, that seek to keep the drug war going, to keep the modern police state running, that seek a regulatory structure on the market that boxes out these small time businesses in Black communities, that the redlining effects that ghettoize communities, right? There's a ton of it. And the people who seek to support it, they're not out carrying tiki torches or waving Confederate flags. They're sipping cocktails and chortling with each other, in their country clubs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's what I'd say
here's the thing when you go ahead, Kareem.
Okay, here's what I'd say. A lot of what they're propped up by, again, is the police. And I just, I do want to end this because it's been going over an hour and everything.
Really? Bro, this is great, man. Bro, this is awesome.
We can continue.
He's running with it. He's running with it.
Like you guys, like you know what it is. I just truly enjoy listening to someone who agrees and also disagrees with me, and just hearing their ideas and just going back and forth there. And I learn, I may disagree today, I may agree tomorrow. I will admit that most of what you guys are talking about, I agreed yesterday, I might come back, but yeah, it's just great. So if you guys, you guys definitely got to come back, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I am very willing to do that, and I do appreciate, all of you on this call for having a very respectful conversation. And even though we've had some disagreements and sometimes contentiously so, I think everyone on this call respects each other, and we see each other as one team. And together we're going to come to a point of, determining the best practices for creating a freer and fairer and more prosperous society. So I thank you all for being here tonight. I do need to leave fairly soon. Got a kid I got to put to bed, and I got to get some sleep myself. So I do thank you all.
Yeah, but last point I was going to make is I'm pushing back on Adam's point. Okay, I know we're talking about police reform here. Joe Solosky's not necessarily going to go for this, so this isn't going to happen anytime soon. But what I would do is, and like qualified immunity, all that stuff. But while that's working, I'd be like, okay, Joe, we've been in here for a little while. I do like the police, but here, what if we decentralize it even further where you all have these? Okay, hey, cops, what we're going to do is we're going to decentralize this, maybe make a review website like eBay, and hey, get your friend, get your shotgun. How much Bitcoin do you want to walk around the neighborhood with a shotgun, make sure nothing goes wrong? We all leave them reviews. We'll all give you some Bitcoin to keep everything going. And that's how I'd like to do policing. Literally, Max, here's a shotgun. Patrol Jacksonville. How did it look? Did you and your homeboys see anything? That's where
I'm patrolling Jacksonville or anywhere I'm at with a wood chipper.
George Washington said, as far as I'm concerned, the only police should be the
But
armed American
Kareem,
militia.
Kareem, these what Joseph and Adam told us tonight or mentioned was the institutions of police that actually arrived from slavery, etc. Right? So like they were policing the patrolling for that, right? So the problem is that they did start as private institutions.
They did.
Policing did start, so they were hired mercenaries. So if the highest bidder is gonna get the law laid how they want it. So
they were often hired by local governments.
So
local
were
government.
they exactly private?
I wouldn't
Not
call them
exactly.
private. I wouldn't call them private. This is like calling Blackwater.
Come on.
Through that, they're like Blackwater's private. I'm like, I see Eric Prince with Congress and the military-industrial complex all the time. So
Yeah.
he's about as private as these big tech companies are. Like, give me $1 billion for these initiatives. We're private.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a logo. We're private. You're not private. You're just pretending.
They're as private as all the fascist companies out there. You're right.
I still believe in militia.
The thing you're talking about, Max, there with regards to that is,
Go militia.
that's the
guys.
theme
Go
of
militia.
every American Western movie ever. The big guy comes in with enough money to buy his own law enforcement, and before you know it, he's a warlord.
Okay,
I want to go back to
happen,
community
really.
policing, where people know the people in their community. People are patrolling their own community, so they know what's out of place, when it's out of place, who doesn't belong, and why they don't belong.
Mhm.
You need to go back to the model that was created by the Black Panthers.
Well,
You
threat
know,
management in
I
Detroit. if you've
necessarily
ever
agree
looked
with
at them-
Black Panther.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
I study this. I'll end on this. There's a company in Detroit called Threat Management. As you know, Detroit's not the funnest place to go to. After the government failed, you can look up his name. His name's Dale Brown. He said, I want to focus on prevention rather than persecution. So what he did is he got people, trained them in how to stop bullets, how to use martial arts. This guy's impressive. He trained them in how to talk to people. Like you say, hey, you're out here jogging. What are you up to? Can we put you in a
De-escalation.
database? De-escalation. He literally has body cameras. We're filming you just like to let you know, what are you out here for? Oh, we can put you on a list of people. Would you like an escort to where you're going? And most people are doing bad things like an escort. Oh, no, I'll just go home. And from what he said, he's never killed anybody, and no one who's worked for him has ever been killed. So threat management's a good thing for me to say, hey, not only is decentralization work, but
That's
I can
great.
actually replace the police in PA eventually. Maybe it's through Joe Solosky, maybe it's not, maybe it's through education, through that. So with that, guys, we can continue this offline, but I do want to respect Adam's time. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Again, I'm Kareem with the Essential Libertarian, helping you get discussions to create the decentralized future. I just had Joseph Evans from Kind, Idaho. He is awesome when it comes to cannabis, understanding the laws and getting stuff out there. I have Adam Reinhart, who really is a driving force in PA, going for the vice chair, helping integrate LGBTQA plus folks in the Libertarian Party and the Christian Caucus, and Max Henry, my co-host. All right, guys, take it easy. We'll see you soon.